Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the How Did You Learn to Do That podcast. Thank you so much for all the love and support you've shared with me over the last couple of months. We've grown to over 200 followers on Instagram and continue to grow on YouTube as well as on our podcast platforms. And with that, I would love if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified of when we release new videos and when we release new content on our Instagram and Facebook pages as well. And with that, I just want to say a huge thank you for entering our first giveaway and all the love and support. I will be creating new workshops as well as offering coaching soon. So please keep an eye out for that, and you'll get to be the first one to know about it if you subscribe to our newsletter on my website, howdidyoulearntodothat.com. You also will get a journaling guide, and then we'll have a challenge coming up as well. So make sure you watch out for those. Today, we have a great guest, Nichola Henry. She's a life coach from Arizona. She is so inspiring. Her story is so inspiring. She will take you through what a life coach is and how a life coach can help you actually start accelerating your journey to your purpose in life and becoming resilient and learning to cope and really addressing what your goals are in life and how you can move forward with that. So stay tuned. We'll have her on in just a moment. Hi, everyone. So I'd like to welcome Nichola Henry as our guest for this week's episode. Nichola is a life coach teaching others how to love themselves and ultimately land their dream relationships. Nichola is passionate about building, encouraging, and advocating for others for a life full of joy, confidence, peace, and purpose. Nichola Henry is an East Coast native growing up a little all over the place in Dallas, Tampa, Tallahassee, and the Washington, D.C. area before moving to Phoenix, Arizona. She's been married for 3 years and has a beautiful 1-year-old daughter. Formerly, Nichola was an educator as a special educations teacher and a student affairs professional for 9 years total. You can find Nichola on her Instagram at _TrueNorth to learn more about her work, and I will link all her Facebook account and her website on the link show notes, as well as on all my social media accounts. Thank you, Nichola, for joining me today.
Yay, thanks for having me. I'm super looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about you and how you became a life coach and your journey on finding your purpose in life. And so I'll pass it over to you to talk a bit about how you got started on this journey and how you were able to find your purpose in life.
Sure. Thank you. And I absolutely love how we are framing this as a journey, because that's what it is. There's definitely a goal and like at a destination that we want to be able to get to, but it is definitely being very present in the moment and making sure we take every opportunity to appreciate the journey as we go along it. So I know in my bio, I mentioned that I've been a former educator and have just been doing that for 9 years. And if you had asked my parents if when I was 5, if I had told them if I wanted to be a teacher, they would tell you they would not be happy. I grew up with a mom who was from Jamaica. My dad was from the US, and they had gotten their associate's degree in school, but didn't really pursue anything outside of that. So for us, education was number one. Of course, health and love and family, but education was so prevalent in our family. And so I kind of I'll kind of start with my upbringing in general. I think my parents did a fabulous job in raising me, if I do say so myself. So, they taught me to treat others the way you want to be treated, to turn the other cheek if you're ever in a conflict, like letting us know that things aren't worth it, allowing us to show love to others as well. But I think what I thought was purpose then was really just kind of character building, which again is not a bad thing. But when you look at the word purpose in and of itself, it's really just your reason for doing something. Like literally, if you Google it, as a teacher, I love to Google things. And so when you look at that word, it's really just your reason for doing something. So it wasn't until I'd actually gotten to college, which yay, freedom, right? I had a little bit of freedom and I was like, okay, this is my purpose, to just be a good person and smile at everyone and, just like give love. And those are good foundational skills, but it wasn't actually my reason why for who I was. And so I think oftentimes when people are in their journey of purpose, they come to this this standstill in the road, or this fork in the road, if you rather, and they're like, wait, I have this new sense of responsibility. My frontal lobe is a little bit more developed than it was when I was 15 and thought I knew what I was doing. What does life mean outside of getting a college education, outside of getting married and having a job and the white picket fence and the dog? And all of those things are things that I wanted and things that I knew that were beautiful. But in terms of my purpose of like who I was and why I did things, was a point in which I really kind of understood that I didn't really know what those things were. And so I attribute my family for kind of bringing me on the journey of building those good character strengths, but not necessarily why I did them. So it wasn't until I think it was my sophomore or junior year of college. And I'd always, grown up going to church, and that was a really big theme, going every Wednesday, going every Sunday, staying late on Sundays, things like that. And understanding like the purpose of God in my life, but not really ever for myself. So when I got to college and had the freedom, I was like, what? I'll just go to church, check that off, and then keep doing whatever I'm doing. Just like live my life and just, see that that is just something that I just need to do to be able to get it out, and not necessarily what I want to do. And a really key pivotal moment in finding my purpose was I had actually been friends with a girl I'd kind of seen on campus through campus ministry. And she's just like, hey, I'm going through this book together. Do you want to go through it with me? And I'm like, sure. Why not? Sounds good. And it's actually called the One-to-One book. And it's a discipleship book. It actually takes you through just the core principles of what it means to be a Christian. And not just those core principles, but what are some of the struggles that come with that. And no one had ever sat down with me and actually like talked me through those things and said, hey, I go through selfishness as well. I go through sometimes feeling like I don't necessarily know what I'm doing or why, but like, our why is the story and the gospel of Christ in our lives. That is a main reason for our why. And so having someone honestly sit down with me week by week and kind of challenge me in areas of my life, I had never had that. All the friends I was with just wanted to have fun and party in college, and no one actually kind of made me mature a little bit. So it wasn't until she sat me down and I really started asking those questions of myself of who am I? Who do I want to be? Why do I want to be that person? What impact and legacy do I want to have on the world? Like, what? I wasn't thinking of kids and like legacy and like my name outside of that. So when she started asking me those questions, I really started wanting to find the answers. So I started spending more time in my Bible, because that is what was important to me. And it's just something I had always known, but really taking it from a view of this is what my parents did every week. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a choice but to go with them to church, versus I want to go and find some answers for myself. So I really had to not only draw that line in the sand of, okay, I can't keep partying until I'm 40. I mean, I guess I could, but that's not the life that I wanted. But before I graduate, like I need to kind of grow up a little bit in this safe space of college to see who I actually am and what I want to become and evolve into. And so I had actually gotten baptized, I believe that summer before my senior year of college. And little did I know, making that step has been huge in my life, but not all my problems went away. Not all my who am I and what am I doing and why went away. I just had a certain urge within me to say, you know what, this is important enough for me to actually pursue. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. And essentially that's kind of like the theme that I've had throughout my life since I was 21 in college until now. And you know what, I might not have all of the answers. I might have a little bit of doubt and fear, but that's okay, because I don't have to stay in that place, and I can continue to pursue and see how I'm going to grow through this journey in my life. So yeah, that's kind of where I am now. And now having a kid, you're thinking, okay, how do I teach her to do that? How do I still instill what my parents have taught me and what I believe is important, but also saying, hey, honey, this is what we believe as a family. And communicating that to a 1-year-old. If anyone knows how to do that, I want to see them on your podcast, because that's where I am right now.
Oh, I can relate to you a lot about communicating with a 1-year-old. It is kind of a bit difficult. Yeah, so I can relate to trying to communicate with your 1-year-old, and that will be a challenge. I'll try to find someone that can share how to do that, or maybe a 1-year-old can come on and tell us how to communicate with them. That would be
Totally.
nice. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think that's very inspiring, and it's very similar to stories where there's just one person that has just asked you to do something you didn't think anything of, and that's helped to change the course of your life. Similar to Ian's episode, he said something similar where someone that he knew asked him to join him in church, just to, and he said, oh, why not? And when he went, that totally changed the trajectory of his life, and what he was doing in his purpose in life as well. And so you said that as well. And I think that for me too, I didn't have necessarily one person that changed my life of, purpose, but it was a series of stories of people that were doing things that, asked me to come along in the journey, or who were just sharing their own purpose or their own insights that I was like, oh, that's inspiring. Maybe I should look into that and reflect on myself and, what I want to do. And
Right.
and the piece that you said about how do I now relate this and, decide and try to instill these values or these morals in my family,
Yeah.
now that I have a family and that you have a family. And I think that is so true. And I think that's something that, and I don't know if your husband and you always agree on all your values, but for me, my husband and I, we have, for the core, like our core principles are the same.
Yeah.
But when it comes to how to execute that in our daughter, like I want my daughter, not to be sheltered. So I want her not to be in pain, but I want her to experience sadness and experience pain because it builds resiliency in her, right? And my husband is like, no, why would we ever want that? Let's just protect her. And like, she never has to feel that. And I was like, no, but then she'll never be resilient when she's an adult and know how to process her own emotions.
Right. And I love how you, oh, sorry.
And if we keep protecting her, yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned that as well, because I think the sheltering, of course, is like the sense of self-preservation, right? Like, this is my little girl or my little boy or whatever, and I want to make sure that I protect them, and that is definitely true. But why not allow them to expose those things when you're there? And you can sometimes pick up the pieces of, just in a sense where they might fail or might cry or maybe experience those things, rather than, I feel like for me, at least in my family, in terms of like purpose, and I know I'll eventually talk about like calling and even the difference between those two, but just purpose for right now, like I can't ever recall my parents ever sitting me down and actually talking about, these are our family values and this is how we operate as a family. It was more so unspoken and just kind of an expectation. I didn't have an opportunity to contribute how I felt about those things. Not that I think, even if I did, my opinion wouldn't have mattered anyway, but I think at least being able to dialogue with my mom and my dad of why we did things, why we sit together at the dinner table, why we go to church is just so important, because their brains at this moment are so malleable, and they're so impacted by change, in either a good way or a not so good way. So when I wasn't getting that at home, I was looking for, well, what are my friends' parents doing when I go to their house? And you start comparing, oh, well, they talk about relationships, or they talk about drugs or sex or things like that in their family. Why don't we do that here? And even something so important like purpose and calling, it's like, why aren't we talking about this with our little ones? So I definitely feel you there, and definitely feel you on our core values. My husband and I are the same, and what we want for our family, how we execute them could be a whole nother podcast topic. But at least we're having the conversations that our parents didn't have with us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think of with raising my daughter, I always think about what I want that. And I go back to my childhood, and I don't know if you experienced this too, but when I had my daughter, I felt like I was kind of like reborn also. And I had to kind of go back into my childhood to kind of go through all those processes. And as I saw her growing up and learning these things, I was like, oh, like, did anyone teach me that? And like literally you realize when you have a child that you have to teach them everything. And I would reflect back on myself, like, was I taught that? Was I not taught that? Or what did my parents do that I don't want to pass on? And I totally agree. My family was also very like, pull up your boots and just keep going. Don't talk about it. Don't show your emotions, because they thought that was weakness. Just be tough and tough it out. And we didn't talk about purpose. We talked about jobs, like, what job do you want?
Yep.
Not about like, oh, does that job make you happy? And I think that, for my daughter, like you said, it's, as long as you're there, you can model the behavior, for them, and help to really allow them to dig deep and make those connections and just be present in that form. And I think that's amazing. And so, I guess, how did you decide you wanted to be a life coach? Was that a lifelong journey, or did that come out of your experience with that book?
So that actually didn't start with the book for me. With life coaching for me, that more so came out of, I would say, people kind of hinting to me that it should be something should look into. And I'm like, oh, do you mean a counselor? Like, I don't want to be a counselor. I don't want to go back to school. Like, I'm not really interested in that, at least at the time right now, being completely naive to what is a life coach? What do they do? What types of life coaches are they? How are they different than mental health professionals and things like that. So for me, it was more so people kind of hinting it. And I was like, okay, I'll Google it. I'll, look into it. And then realizing kind of like the stark difference of what they do apart from, which most people think is counseling, but also the power that they have in partnering with mental health professionals to really enhance a person's life. Because that's what we want, right? Life is short. And so we don't want to wake up doing the things. I think that's the definition of insanity, like doing the same things and hoping that it's a different outcome. Yeah. But as a life coach, you kind of say, hey, has this been working for you? And someone going, wait, as I reflect, like, no, that hasn't been working. I'm still in these toxic relationships. I still don't have the confidence that I want. I'm not, even as small as I'm applying for the job that I know that I want and I'd be good at because of X, Y, and Z and background and stuff like that. So even just helping someone come to that point where they're being asked those tough questions is just something I had never considered before, because it kind of came naturally to me. And so it was back in, December, someone had said, you should become a life coach. And, I kind of went through what is that and what's going on? And after I had done more research and realized, oh, okay, so they're not necessarily focused on like trauma and helping someone heal and overcome from their past experiences. There are trickles of that because those effects can be lifelong, right? You can't erase someone's history or traumatic experience. It's going to come up. I don't care if you do hypnosis or like whatever you think you got, it's going to come up. But helping someone be able to say, hey, I can look back on that and know what my struggles were. And now I have a goal moving forward. And I can quickly bounce back from that issue in my life so that I can move forward. Yeah. And not bouncing back and thinking, wait, you actually took 3 steps back. You jumped back at, too many spaces, but saying, hey, I have this goal and I know that I have, doubt within myself to get there, but I'm not going to let that doubt fester for 3 years. It might be a day and a pint of ice cream and then we're over it and then we keep going. Yeah. So yeah, that's been my journey.
I love that you said that you can do hypnosis or anything and it's not going away, because I always relate, and I heard this from someone and I can't remember who, but that, when you have experiences or traumas, you got to think of your mind and your body like a sewer system. You could push it down. You could literally push it as far down as you want, but
Yeah.
it's going to manifest itself up through another pipe, and
Yeah.
it's going to come out in another way, and at some point in your life you do have to address it. And when it gets stuck, when you have a backup, that's when you, like you said, you end up worrying about it for over 3 years or 4 years or longer term impacts of it that
Yeah.
really hold you back from living a healthy and resilient life. And a lot of what you're saying in coaching is definitely about teaching resilience.
Yeah.
um, and I relate life coaches to like sport coaches, right? Like if you want to be the best basketball player, for example, you could do it on your own. You could. It just will take you a longer time, right? And then having the accountability, the knowledge, the skills to do it,
Mm-hmm.
it does take longer. But when you have a coach there that can hold you accountable, that can teach you how to be more strategic, teach you how to be more resilient, make sure that you are showing up for practice and you are showing up for the game, and it is holding you accountable,
Right.
you become a much better player and a much better and more strategic player, and able to make those goals and those adjustments. And like you said,
Yeah.
if you have a life coach, it's someone that literally coaches you through life so that you are able to come back and meet your goals and be resilient and
Yeah.
bounce back from triggering experiences
Mhm.
much
And
quicker. So
and it's also someone that is safe, but doesn't necessarily need to know all the skeletons in your closet,
yeah.
right? So that safety of, um, I can speak to this person about my goals and about what's holding me back, but I don't have to relive the whole experience and kind of divulge that traumatic experience, or even something non-traumatic. Like I have a client right now that's like, my parents, I knew they loved me, but they never told me I love you. And that is why I'm kind of having this identity crisis now, because I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like, because I never got that validation from my family. And so we talk about that, just a small fraction of it, but we say, okay, like where do we want to move forward now? And I'm going to tell you what you need to hear and not just what you want to hear, out of love, right? I'm never going to like come and yell at someone, but I love that about life coaches too, is that you don't have to kind of divulge all of those deep, dark things. We must be aware that they're there. It's a level of self-awareness, but then saying, okay, how do we want to move forward? And particularly with purpose as well, and looking at that, it is reflecting back on your history and where you grew up and how you grew up, but saying, you have so much power in you to say, what do I want to be called to do? What do I want my purpose to be? And like calling is more, it's just like an urge. I like Googled it, so I have it right here. An urge toward a particular way of life or career. So it could be a career, but we kind of skip the part of life, like way of life, and it's like, oh, career. And it's like, no, it's a strong urge. It's something that comes natural. It's something that you notice that happens in your body physically, in your mind, in your spirit, and in your soul. And being an educator in the classroom, unfortunately, that's not where our focus is with our students. It's about what math and language arts standards are they going to be able to accomplish. And so we have to rely on the families. But if you can see, I grew up in a beautiful home, but my family wasn't teaching me that. So I was relying on the world to kind of teach me about my calling and about my purpose. So I love that as life coaches, we get to say, hey, Janet, or whatever your name is, like that was your past, that's okay, but you have the opportunity to change it. And if you think that you don't, you're going to continue in this same cycle. And I know that that's not what you want, because it's not been working for you. So let's change it. And giving someone that power is just so opening for them. And it's just really cool to be able to do that with people.
Yeah. And, I definitely, I know of those stories where people, like, they know, like, I feel like people often know where they want to go, or their dream, or what they don't want in life anymore. It's the action piece of it that I find so challenging for people. They're just like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even have time for this. I can't wrap my mind around this. And actually this week I actually started last week, but I've been reading The Magic, a part of a community, The Magic by Rhonda Byrne.
Okay.
And it's a part of this community. And so it's a 28-day practice, but every day you wake up and the first thing you do is you count your blessings. So you say 10 things that you're grateful for and why. And then every day has a different type of practice. So today's practice actually was around money, right? Saying that if you have a bill, take the bill and print it and write on it. Like if you've paid it off, you say paid, thank you, right? Or if you haven't paid it off yet, then you just say thank you for the money to pay this bill or whatever. And then you just show gratitude.
Yeah.
Over 28 days, there's different practices for different parts of your life. So yesterday's practice actually was around food, and I went out for dinner with my friends. And so what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to, look at your food and think about everybody that had a hand in creating and bringing that food to your plate. So that's from the farmers to the producers to the distribution people to the drivers to the stores and the distribution manufacturing centers to the kitchen and then creating the stove and everything. There's so much that goes into food production. And then after, you're supposed to use your hand, go like this, and sprinkle magic dust on it. Sounds ridiculous, I know, but you're supposed to do that. And then you're supposed to take the first bite and really savor the taste and say thank you. So I went out with my friends last night. I did this, right? And one of my friends caught me doing the sprinkle. I was like, what are you doing right now? And I was like, I'm sprinkling my magic dust to be grateful for my food. And I got it so hard. They just made so much fun of me. They were like, this is ridiculous. I hope you don't get offended, but I get the gratitude thing. It's a great idea and great practice, but what you're doing is crazy. And I told them, I was like, well, if you think I'm crazy, I was like, try it and see what happens. Try it and see what happens. And then this morning, one of my friends messaged me and they tried it just before bed. They said some gratitude. And this morning they got an email for an interview that they've been waiting for so long, that they didn't know they're going to get it. And she just messaged me and was like, this is insane. I seriously did this, and I told them to believe it, not make it a joke.
Yeah.
And this happened. And I was like, yes, it's once you take those actions, and you want your life to transform, it can transform, you just have to really believe it.
Yeah. And it's about taking us off of, this microwave society or this kind of living on autopilot. Have you ever driven somewhere and then you get home and you're like, how did I even get here? I don't remember stopping at any stoplights or slowing down or looking at the speed limit or knowing where to turn. You just kind of go. And so it's about really savoring the richness of every single those moments and noticing that this journey of purpose and calling and meaning in life isn't meant to be done in isolation. Yes, there might be moments of isolation of you really need to focus and see what's important to you because you don't want those external factors to influence you, but those external factors can enhance what you've kind of found to be true within yourself, but that takes time. Before I work with any client, I ask them, to work with me, you really have to put in time and energy. Of course, there's a financial investment. I got to be able to feed my family, but time and energy are the things that are going to be able to, in a sense, cost you the most. And are you going to be willing, like you said, to do what I'm coaching you to do and actually believe it? And that's where a lot of people kind of can get stuck in their ways in terms of their mindset, their beliefs, and old things come up and we talk through. No, those things happen. That's good. That's a part of your story. I would never ask you to rewrite that. But now we can actually move forward. We don't know all the steps. That's exciting. How can we flip it from it's paralyzing to that's okay? Failure is okay. That's another thing I'm trying to teach my daughter, as I feel like sometimes I'm failing as a parent. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I got frustrated, and it's not the end of the world. She still loves me. She still shows me grace and cuddles and all of those things. But that's a journey, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that is so true, and I took early on when my daughter was born, around 4 or 5 months, I took a course on the intelligent baby and, how to speak to your baby to increase their intelligence. and,
Ooh.
and create a positive environment. And one of the things was like not to say the word no,
Mm-hmm.
and replace no with like, uh-oh, or something along those lines about, like if they're throwing their food on the floor, saying, uh-oh, your food belongs on your plate, not on the floor, and being very conscious of that. And so we do try to practice as much as we can, but I've definitely said no, like, no, stop it. What are you doing? All the things that they say you should. And, now, like, you ask her something, she's like, no. I'm like, oh no. Like, I clearly failed there. But at the end of the day, I just felt like, we're all human. We can't raise the perfect child. And I honestly think that her having some resiliency and understanding is okay. And like you said, if you say something to your daughter, you feel like a failure. And I think that's because a lot of pressure is on us as parents to
Yeah.
be amazing and raise these amazing children. But when they do go out into the world, when they go to daycare or school or whatnot, there are kids there, and even educators, that are not necessarily doing the same things that we're doing, but then
Mm-hmm.
our kids are still okay. They're learning how to communicate differently with different people. And we just hope that we can teach them problem solving and empathy. And that's really all we could do. And I think that, what you share is very important, and as she, grows up and sees you doing your work and living your purpose,
Yeah.
then she will be inspired to figure out, what is my purpose other than, what's my job.
Yeah, yeah, and even like I was talking to, I think, a friend the other day. We even have like how we asked that question growing up is like, what do you want to do when you get up, or what kind of job do you want to have? And I'm like, on career day, if she picks 12 jobs, like I'm getting all 12 outfits, like that's what she wants to do. She doesn't have to settle down on, I want to be a doctor or I want to be a lawyer. And if she does, that's great. But I'm never, going to tell her, well, you need to pick one, honey, or we only have, this much. But it's like, no, like you can pick 3 if you want to. And if you wake up and decide you only want to pick 1 or just 2, that's okay. And I think, honestly, from a lot of the clients that I work with, there's this deep longing and sense of wanting to be accepted,
Yeah.
to be feeling like you are enough, and that you have enough already within you to be able to contribute to the world. A lot of the clients I speak to feel like they're not enough, but they also feel like it's because they're in lack, like they're missing something, that they're broken in some way. And that's just a story that they've kind of told themselves over time, and myself included, in thinking that. And so it's a point where we have to say, no, I was born with everything that I need inside of me. And now let's just using opportunities to be able to express how unique and special I am. Like even, twins or septuplets, however many kids you could have that are birthed in a mother's womb for that special time together, they're all uniquely different. And
Yeah.
so we shouldn't treat ourselves any differently when we're trying to pursue our purpose and our calling. Yes, we want to make people happy. Yes, we want to get the good job, and yay, you did it, and I saw that you rocked that. Like all of those things are great, but the fact that we didn't get them shouldn't be the only reason why we can't pursue getting the things and living the life that we want to have.
Yeah, I completely resonate, and there are people that think they've found their purpose, and they pursue it and they achieve, the goal they had set forward, and then they get into the role and they realize, okay, and now I'm trying to practice this purpose, but it's not the one for me. And I feel like sometimes, especially if you had to invest in education, or invest in a course, or whatnot, or time even, you get kind of stuck like, okay, I invested in this, I don't want to quit this, even though it's not doing what you set out for it to do. And then I find that as a society, when somebody, has multiple careers or multiple paths in life, or they go from being a teacher to then wanting to be a doctor to then wanting to be, a yoga instructor or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
People see that as like indecisive, or they can't settle down, or they see it as a negative thing.
Yeah.
No, but I often look at that and I'm like, that's more powerful, and that person has more strength than someone that stays in the same job for 40 plus years, because the person that stays in the job for 40 plus years, they're not pushing the envelope of what they can do and their abilities, but also figuring out, like, is that their purpose in life, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but some are like our parents and our grandparents and the older generations. I feel like they just think of like your job as like, it's just your job, and then you
Yep.
come home and then you can be happy at home. You don't have to be happy at work. And I think our generation is like, no, let's be happy all the time.
Yeah.
Let's make our job our happiness.
Right. Right. And even like this pursuit of happiness, of like, that's even a whole other word that we can even, break down, and like, what does that actually mean? And what does that tangibly look like? And not happiness in, oh, it feels good for a year, or I got into this job and okay, it was cool for a couple months and now I want to switch. But what is something that's going to be long lasting?
Yeah.
It's like asking those questions. And even, like I said, legacy, it doesn't even have to be kids, but really like your biological children, but even your impact for other people. So I know a lot of the people that I work with, we talk about like career and vocation because those things are important, but I talk a lot about who do you want to be in those roles, and who do you want to be known for
Yeah.
in those roles as well. And for the person who, and I'm gonna laugh at this now, I'll have to share this with my husband. And we were talking about, he's like, okay, you worked at this school in DC. I used to teach for 3 years. And then you switched, moved to Arizona, and then you taught at a university here for 2 years. And then you went back into the classroom for 2 years. And now you're doing life coaching. He's like, I feel like you're kind of moving all over the place. And I was kind of like, like dagger in the heart. Like, I'm not indecisive. I'm like, I did a good job at those roles, but, hearing it from someone close to you is like, okay, what does that mean? Is he disappointed in me? Like, did I do something wrong? Like, does he not believe in me? Those weren't the things he was saying. These are all, conversations in my head. And then I had to kind of come to him and say, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling. But I also believe that the heartbeat of what I was doing in all of those positions was being an educator, which is what I love to do. And that's even what I do in life coaching. No, it's not in a formal brick and mortar classroom.
Yeah.
I'm sure now with COVID, who knows what that will even look like in the future, but even, virtually, in doing that, it's not in that traditional sense. But who I wanted to be in terms of being an educator, learning from my students, people that I interacted with, and giving that back to them as well, was so powerful. I don't care if I'm picking up trash outside, if I'm interacting with people and teaching them something valuable that's going to be able to change their life, like, what better ripple effect job is that? So, I had to kind of bring that up and be like, wait, hold on a second, hold on. And so when we talk about vocation, yeah, if you're going to stay in a job for 40 years, like, do that, but don't do the same thing every day. Like, how are you impacting people where you are? Who do you want to be, and how do you want to make impact right then and there, and kind of challenging people in that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's, yeah, how do you, like you said, you heard that feedback and then you started having the conversations with yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a piece that, you, when you are starting this journey of your purpose in life, understanding that this is your purpose. It's not your purpose because of your husband or your kids or your parents or whatnot. It's just you. And then those stories that you tell yourself are, those barriers, those, areas of your life that you are stopping yourself, and how to
Yeah.
relearn, how to not have those thoughts, not have those barriers, because, so many people that I know, they have these arguments with their significant others because their significant other says one thing, like, like your husband did, and then they have a story with themselves, they believe their version of the story, and then they say, oh, you said this, and then the partner's like, no, I didn't actually say that. It's not what I said. That's also
Guilty.
not.
Guilty.
Me too, 100% guilty. But but being able to actually go back and have that discussion with yourself, to know that that's you and your story and your ability to cope with certain messaging. So how do you actually work around so you can learn to cope differently or more effectively? And that's the work that you do, and that's where you come in as a life coach in
Mm-hmm.
helping to guide those discussions.
Oh yeah, and totally, like like you said as well, like it's definitely a discussion, because at that moment I was like, I don't have all the answers, and I don't know what it is, what the next thing is, and if it's going to work out, and blah, blah, blah. And you kind of feel like you have to justify what you're doing instead of saying, this is what I feel like I'm called to do right now. You're right. I don't necessarily know the outcome, but I know that we're married and we're one and we're going to do this together. I would never put us in a compromising position, but we're going to work through this together. And I think, people that I work with too, I rely them not to just focus on their own self-love, because that's, kind of what I help people to do, work on their self-esteem, their confidence, really be able to look in the mirror and love who they see looking back at them, but also doing that in community. So a lot of what I have them do is reflect with other people, the people who know you just outside of me, that's okay, and not me, and my desires and what I want to be happy, but taking those things into consideration, and then also saying, how do the people who have been key players in my life attribute to this, and how can we work together in bringing that in? So more from a community aspect as well, because I think when people hear that I work on self-love, it kind of resonates with being selfish, and that's not what I'm saying is at all. I'm wanting us to love ourselves so that we can continue to better love the people that we truly care about.
Yeah, I completely agree that is so important to have community, and not feel that you're in this alone, because, and I'm sure you can relate to this, a lot of the times when you have an issue that you're trying to work through, or a challenge you're trying to work through, and you think it's just you, and then as soon as you share with someone, they're like, yeah, I deal with the same thing, this is how I do it. And then you share, because we all, like you said, we're all unique, we all have different mechanisms to cope, and sometimes what I'm doing may not help me, but it may help you, and what you're doing may not help you, but may help me. And having that community of people that you can have deep, meaningful conversations with. And I have definitely seen a shift in my own communities, in my own circles, and people in the world, I would say, that I follow, or that I listen to, that a lot of people are shifting from wanting quantity of friends, so wanting the most amount of friends, to wanting a few select meaningful and deeply connected friendships that they can have those deep conversations with. And I definitely think that's a change that is so needed at this time, especially with COVID and all the challenges that come around that as well.
Yeah, totally. And even when I think about like my own faith, and I think of the life of Jesus, and really just the people outside of him who are just pivotal in terms of being good examples of living out the gospel. A lot of them didn't have, like a lot of friends. A lot of them had power, but I think we'll often realize, like, once we kind of make it to the top, I guess when we're pursuing our purpose, we'll be able to see who are the people that are really sticking around and being with us. Like, Jesus only had 12 disciples, and many of them betrayed him. So it's like, why do we think that we need to be liked by so many people? We start comparing ourselves. Well, they've got their purpose and they're living their life, and this is, being flashy on social media and taking a step back and saying that's only a highlight reel, right? They're posting the most exciting part of their life. Of course, that's all that we're seeing, but also noting that, like, looking at our own like circles and saying who, like you said, like that quantity over quality. Okay, yeah, I had to, no, quality over quantity. Okay, yeah. I'm a language arts teacher, not math. Don't come for me.
Yeah, no, I think that is so important. And so as you've started on this journey, if you could go back, or if there's somebody that's just starting to get on the journey, or even your clients that are just trying to get on this journey, what is the biggest piece of advice you give them of how to get started?
Ooh, how to get started? I would say two things. For me, and I think I've said many times, I'm a Googler. I love information because I don't know what I don't know. And it's not necessarily that I've got to believe all of it, but I'm definitely going to go out and try to find the answer to whatever is keeping me up, past my bedtime. So I would say research, Google. I'm sure somebody's looked up the question, how to find my purpose, how to find what I'm meant to do, steps to find my purpose, whatever those things are. Start Googling them. And then the second thing is, I would say, find a professional and actually act, and like take action. And like you said, kind of a couple of minutes before, in terms of like, you could do those things all on your own. And yes, it's a good journey of self-discovery, but it's never going to amount to someone who is trained to be able to guide you through that and help you to speed up the process.
Yeah.
If I have an illness, right, and I know, okay, I could go and, get all of these herbs together and all these plants and make the medicine myself, yeah, I would know that I could do that. But how much longer is that going to take me versus going to the doctor, getting the treatment that I need or the diagnosis, and picking up the prescription, that I need to be able to help me speed up whatever's going in my body so I can resume life as normal and make that even better. So I would say research, Google things, find what resonates with you in terms of your purpose. And then I would say begin to act, begin to look at people on Facebook, on LinkedIn, wherever you're kind of hanging out. And begin to just ask questions and say, hey, I love what you do. I read your profile. Can I get 30 minutes of your time just to ask some questions? Because the worst thing they could say is no, or leave you on read, like read message and they don't respond. And I think people are more fearful of the rejection than actually just asking and seeing what happens.
Yeah. And definitely with this podcast, for sure, I realize that when somebody is, for the most part, I would say like 90% of people that are on this journey, and where they've found their purpose in life, or they've achieved their goals, or a level of success that's success to them.
Yeah.
They want to share. They want people to ask them, like, how did you do it? Because they're so proud of themselves. They're proud of themselves for taking that journey and being committed to themselves and making the sacrifices that they needed to do to get there. And they want to share. Like, I love to talk about how I started this podcast, my journey, and what I'm doing. And I'm sure you love to talk about your story of how you became a life coach and overcame some of those barriers. And that's why, successful people write biographies. You realize as soon as someone's successful, they have a book. And like, a lot of the time it's because they want to share. They're not trying to hold back because there's some secret ingredient to why they got successful. Right. Most of the time that's not the case. It's because they committed to themselves. They came, they worked hard. They committed to themselves every single day. They sacrificed. And there's a quote that I've heard from somebody that I always go back to, and I can't remember who said it, but they said, live in a way that most people will not, for a short period of time, so that you can then live in a way that most people will not for the rest of your life. Right. Wow. And they relate it often to like the material side. I think that's where it came from. It's like, spend 2 years and work hard in your business, work hard to save money and whatnot, and then have freedom, financial freedom on the other hand. Right. Mm-hmm. But I like to relate it to you as a person. Spend 2 years digging deep, going through your traumas, figuring all that out, figuring out how to cope, move forward, doing all the hard work, so that you, like you said, you can spend the rest of your life bouncing back quickly from moments and being able to move forward after a day or two, as opposed to 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years later, because life is short in the grand scheme of things, and you need to be able to be available for those opportunities that come up next. And if you're stuck wallowing in something that happened 3 years ago, you're not going to be there and available for opportunity.
Oh yeah, totally. And I loved your quote. Another one that I like is scripture based, and it's Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8. And it says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And that encourages me to say, whatever's going on in my life, like when I feel like I'm in a place of struggle, or I'm kind of questioning, is this what I'm supposed to be doing, or why am I supposed to be doing it? And like kind of coming back to center, I realize that like Jesus and what God wants, at least for me and for what I believe, is to love God and to love people. And so it does matter what I do, because I think that God wants us to like what we do and use our talents. But at the end of the day, as long as we're loving him and we're loving people and we're kind of coming back to that center, and we know how to come back to that center quickly, like life is going to be a wild, cool, crazy ride.
Yeah, exactly. Always coming back to your core value is so important, and what your why. Like spending time figuring out your why, it helps you get through those hard times.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, when you know, being a life coach, and you know, it's kind of hard to not absorb all the challenges people are going through or to think about it, and being a mom and an educator and having your own family and, you know, life, how do you maintain a positive mindset? What are some practices you do when you feel a bit overwhelmed or a bit you know, questioning your why or struggling with a challenge that may be in front of you? What do you do to kind of realign yourself and get back to your why and living that purpose?
No, that's really good. It's something that I feel like I go through like every quarter. Like every time the season changes, I'm like, what's happening? I like have this quarter life crisis moment. But I think for me, kind of like what I said to, you know, before I work with any clients, I talk about time and energy. And so when I'm feeling that, and like it's a feeling, y'all, it's not like, oh, it's in my head. It's like physical. Like I'm stressed. I'm, you know, clenching my jaw at night. Like my shoulders are really tense. Like when I feel it, I have to stop and put the time and the energy to speaking about what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And actually talk to it and not run from it. Because I'm just delaying the process because it's still there, those doubts. But I have to actually take the time and the energy, no matter how inconvenient it feels, because I'm like, I got to do laundry, I got to feed her, and then I got to respond to clients, I got to get their notes to them, then I got to pick up groceries. And it's like some things just have to be put on pause.
Yeah.
I have to go to my husband and say, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. I need you to kind of take the weight of these other responsibilities I have for 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever it might be. And I just sit, and I might cry, I might journal, I might do both. And I really take the time and energy to push in. And I really kind of reflect on not why am I, you know, feeling this way. That's definitely important. But what were the warning signs that I ignored before I actually got here? And it's like, oh, slap in the face. Like, okay, like, you know, Nichola, as I'm speaking in third person, like, what are the warning signs that I ignored? Kind of reveling in, okay, this is what's going on. This is how I feel, what led me here. And then, okay, what do I choose to do next?
Yeah.
And then whatever choice I make in that moment, and it's usually something around my mindset, it always for me comes back to my mindset of, okay, that sucked, and that's okay. I'm going to, you know, when my husband comes back or whenever I come back, I'm just going to do what I know that I need to do to move forward. So for me, it's that time and that energy, attacking those things head on, deciding what did I ignore before I got there, and then drawing that line in the sand and saying, okay, I'm no longer going to do that. Now, of course, my mind, you know, you're thinking, oh, when's the next time it's going to happen? But for me, it's like, okay, I'm drawing the line in that sand, and that's it. So that the next time I can be better prepared for when it comes.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you there, because when it's so true that it is physical. You know, when I get the headaches, when I get the neck tension, like you said, shoulder, I am a clencher and I'm a grinder with my teeth. So when I'm grinding, I wear retainers at night. So when I get up in the morning, I can see that I was, you know, grinding, and I'm like, yeah, I have to sit and, you know, question why. And for me, I find crying pretty cathartic. So I'll actually cry, and I tell my husband, I was like, I need to go clean my eyes. So I need to go cry for a little bit. And I say that all the time. But Yeah, that's been super helpful. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you so much for all your insight. I think that that will help really inspire people to understand what a life coach does, especially taking that look into themselves and figuring out their purpose in life and what that means and how much having resiliency and being able to bounce back does help to propel you further and deeper into your life. But it all starts with connecting with yourself and making a commitment first.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank
Um,
you.
I will, like I said, I will link all of Nicola's Instagram and Facebook page, as well as her website and contact information on our link show notes, as well as on social media, so you can connect with her. And if you need a life coach or you want to explore what that means, please reach out to her. I'm sure she'd be happy to connect with you and help you get started on your journey to your purpose in life.
Cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much for listening to the end of that episode. I hope that you enjoyed hearing Nichola share her story about her journey into becoming a life coach, what she does as a life coach, and the insights and tips that she uses to continue in her journey to her purpose in life. If you have any questions, please send me a note on Instagram or at info@howdidyoulearntodo.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter to receive your free journaling guide to get you started on your self-reflection. And remember, in order to catalyze your life from ordinary to extraordinary, you need to commit to yourself and do this for yourself only. And that is the way we can move forward into achieving your own dreams in life. All right, so please like, subscribe, and share our podcast with your family and your friends and your community, and help us grow this community of people that are driven, that are sharing their insights with you about how you can also achieve your purpose in life and achieve your dreams. All right, we'll see you next week. Bye.